This is Apropos. Last week's deadly attack on tourists in the disputed Kashmir region plunged relations between India and Pakistan to new lows, with both sides hinting at imminent military action. India accuses Pakistan of backing the massacre in which 26 men, mostly Indian Hindus, were killed, a charge that Islamabad denies. Washington has again called on both sides to defuse the crisis. With more, here's Florent Marché.
In this mountain city in Kashmir, locals are on edge. Recent clashes between Pakistan and India are on everyone's mind.
A lot of people here are worried because we're used to working and doing business normally, but now we're distressed and caught up in these tensions.
We want peace. We want the two countries to live like good neighbors.
New Delhi says Islamabad is responsible for the Pahalgam attack in Kashmir that killed 26 civilians in April. For its part, Pakistan denies any involvement. On Tuesday, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi gave the green light to India's armed forces to conduct a military response. Fearing an imminent strike, Pakistani-administered Kashmir closed more than 1,000 religious schools for 10 days. In the public schools that remain open, local authorities have launched first aid training courses.
We learned how to help others during emergencies. Since India is threatening us, there is a possibility of war, so it's important that we support one another.
Despite calls for de-escalation from Washington, India and Pakistan exchanged fire on the border for the 7th day in a row before dawn on Thursday.
With more on the rising tensions between both sides, we're joined by Dr Subir Sinha from the University of London's School of Oriental and African Studies. Thank you so much for being with us on the programme this evening. You are a specialist in South Asian politics, Subir. What can be done at this point, if anything, to diffuse tensions, do you believe?
It's a very strange situation. It's been 9 days and, the public in India has really been primed to ask for a massive armed retaliation against Pakistan. And if you look at the rhetoric of the government in the first few days, that's what they seem to be promising as well, a swift and massive retaliatory attack. But if you look at what has happened since then, there's a question of drying up rivers going into Pakistan. That was followed by sending too much water going into Pakistan. And then, of course, you've mentioned the sort of free hand that the Prime Minister has said he would like to give to the army. Not much has happened. And on the Pakistan side, there's complete denial. They say that there's no evidence that they have done this, that they would like to see any kind of an evidence. And of course, they blame the Indians for interfering in Baluchistan, which is seeing a separatist movement of its own. So you've got two nuclear powers. You've got two countries that have strong sort of movements for autonomy or separation. And you've got spy agencies on both sides claiming that they are doing damage to the other side. And you've got armies at the ready. So what has held things back is that it seems to me that the Indians probably thought that they were going to get a straightforward green signal from the Americans, and that's not been as forthcoming as they would have probably liked. Secondly, you've got other restraining factors. For example, China is an unknown in all of this. Have they given some kind of a guarantee to the Pakistanis that we don't know? And a lot of this discussions is not really in the open domain. It's by rumors. It's very difficult at the best of times to figure out the truth from the Indian media, and watching it is not very helpful. But then Pakistani media, it has also not been extremely sort of great in regard to its respect for truth. So things have not escalated in the way in which everyone was fearing it would. And I guess what is holding things back is either side calculating how much damage they can do to each other without there being international repercussions.
And bearing that in mind, then, how much pressure do you think the Indian government is coming under here? You've said that the attack had provided justification for open hatred and that Modi supporters are baying for war. Is that still the case this week?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of talk about the enemy within. And they're trying to link the enemy within as traitors to the country and somehow colluding with Pakistan. But once again, the evidence and in fact even the narrative is very sketchy. So you do have, for example, in the state of Gujarat, where Modi is from, a massive campaign by the government to evict people who they claim are uh, people of Bangladeshi or even Rohingya origin, and they're people without papers. They're obviously all Muslims. So their homes have been bulldozed and they've been turned out. And then you've also got a similar kind of a scenario in which, in the state of Uttarakhand, there has been heightened violence against Muslims, most recently in the town of Nainital, which is a kind of well known summer vacation spot, a so called hill station. And then there's been a stabbing of a young man after being asked if he was Muslim in the state of Kanpur. So there is the very strong sort of feeling that the anger against Pakistan is effectively being allowed to be expressed on Muslims, either by government agencies, as in the case of the evictions in Ahmedabad, or effectively by vigilantes or angry mobs, which is why many of us believe that it is not so much mob rule that we are seeing, it is sort of a rule by mob. In other words, the mob becoming an instrument for effectively governing populations that are seen as being somehow suspect.
And given that context then in India, is some kind of a military response inevitable, do you think? And what might that look like? There are various options that would be open if the Indian government decides to go down that path.
I think it would be very dangerous for Modi to not have a military response. So much of the tough, strong leader persona has hinged on the massive rhetoric against Pakistan. And in fact, in the previous occasion, when the Indians claimed they had sent, aircraft and hit some targets in a town called Balakot within Pakistan, at that point, Modi had coined a slogan, "Ghar mein ghus ke marenge." We will enter your house and we will beat you up. And in fact, that it proved in the 2019 elections to be one of the winning slogans. So he's so much associated with the rhetoric of violence against Pakistan and the idea that they're on the ready, that to not have any military response really is I think very dangerous for his tenure as prime minister. On the other hand, what are the targets? I mean, ultimately, Pahalgam is 200 miles, kilometers inside the Indian border. Uh, they have not. Initially, they had accepted a degree of security lapse. The Indian authorities had, but that's been sort of taken off the tables of discussion on different television channels and the like. So I think they're basically looking for a show of strength. They're looking for some kind of a target that would be small, but at the same time symbolic enough. So perhaps military installations or headquarters of some agency within Pakistan. But it's not clear. Nothing is being spoken about in the open, except that the Prime Minister has given the army operational freedom, which everyone is interpreting to mean that the army is responsible or the armed forces are responsible for choosing the target and the time and mode of attacking that particular target.
And you mentioned, Subir, the US earlier. Are broader geopolitical tensions having a big impact on what is actually happening in India? Pakistan also, you've spoken also about the 9 days that we've experienced since this attack, saying that nothing has happened. Do you think that local grievances are playing into the situation as well, or is it more about the broader geopolitical context?
I think geopolitically, this should be far more in the sort of global public discussion than it seems to be at the moment. Because let's not forget, Pakistan, I believe, is the biggest army in the Muslim world. It is also a nuclear power. The Indian army is among the biggest armies in the world. It is also a nuclear power. They're armed to the teeth on both sides. Their armies have had very bad relations with one another. So geopolitically, the idea that India and Pakistan might go to war, might have an escalation on either side that could, then sort of begin to get out of control. That long-standing treaties such as the Indus Water Treaty or the Simla Agreement, which kind of determines the line of actual control, basically between Pakistan and India on Kashmir. If all of this was to unravel, that would effectively be the unraveling of 50, 60 years of kind of diplomatically managed coexistence between these two countries. And then you've got to take into account China, which is obviously a close friend of Pakistan. Some of the rivers that India is looking to stop the flow of water getting into Pakistan, in fact, have their origins within China. There are other major Indian rivers, not in this part of the subcontinent, but on the east, which also come out of China. How much will China, put on, at stake for its major regional ally? On the Indian side, there are stories floating around that its close friend Israel has been helping it getting intelligence and effectively monitoring the movement of troops and in fact, of particular officers within the Pakistani army. And if you look at the US, you've got Kash Patel, head of the FBI, who has come out and who's been a long-term supporter of Mr. Modi and the BJP, who has basically come out and said that the US stands, squarely behind India in all of this. But then the State Department has basically, once again, I think later on this, earlier on this afternoon, gone ahead and urged both sides to not let matters escalate out of control and to exercise restraint as much as possible. Unless India comes up with evidence of Pakistan's role, which is satisfactory to the major sort of global players. Again, remember the United Nations Secretary General also rang up the Indians to say, I hope that there'll be peace and things like that. If there is sort of, proof that cannot be controverted, then obviously India would feel, that it has a right to go ahead and make, some kind of a retaliatory attack. But if the evidence that they have put into international powers and to allies is not of that sort, then it becomes very difficult to justify internationally what kind of actions they might take. However, as I said, the domestic constituency of Mr. Modi is very pro-war and has been for quite a while. And the television stations that normally have been very supportive of Mr. Modi have carried stories and headlines like, Modi will erase Pakistan from the map of the world and things like that. So very extreme rhetoric has not helped, in terms of cool thinking. And particularly for Mr. Modi, right out of the blue, he has come out with a big ticket social reform package, which has nothing to do with the attack in Pakistan. And that, again, everyone is wondering what is going on. I mean, should they not really be focusing on the security situation? Now, many leaders of Mr. Modi's party have tried to make this once again into a Hindu versus Muslim issue, with the Muslims being painted as suspects who are collaborating or colluding with Pakistan. But if you look at the narrative of many of the people, the families of these victims and the survivors of the attack, and let's not forget it was a horrific attack, a massacre of 28 people, they've actually come out and said that they would like to have no repercussions on this on Muslims within India, and they've praised Kashmiris for having helped them right after the attack in terms of taking them to safety or providing them with hotels and meals, often without charging any money. So they've not really been able to cash in on this, so to speak, in terms of creating the large-scale religious polarization, which has really been the engine behind much of the rise of the ruling party in India.
Dr. Subir, we'll have to leave it there for now. Thanks so much for being with us. Dr. Subir Sinha from the University of London School of Oriental and African Studies. Thank you.